Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mystery Mondays on Friday, isn't it? Anyway, sorry I've been a little delayed in doing stuff. I've been having some issues with my computer. Yes, I thought it was my Wi-Fi. I just got through scanning, had nothing new that was found, but there was 12 things that had been previously quarantined, and it occurred to me that I've been told in the past that even if stuff is quarantined on your computer, it can cause issues. So I deleted those things, and now it seems to be running much better. That being said, um, today, I'm back to discussing missing persons cases within national parks inside the United States. This is my main focus for this particular vlog, along with other missing persons cases and criminal cases. That said, if anyone knows of a particular case they would like me to look into and discuss in this vlog, please comment and let me know. Keep your comments respectful, as always, of course. But yes, if there's anything, if you know of someone that's been missing or a murder case that's been going on for a long time, I can do some research on that. Of course, I'm not going to find anything that the authorities don't know, odds are, but I could look into it and put the information out there and make people aware that the person is missing or the case is still unsolved. So, that being said, and I'm going to say a lot of that being said today, I think. Anyway, the case I researched for today is that of Adam Clayton Lyle Jones, whose car was found in Grand Canyon National Park at the South Rim Visitor Center on May 5th, 2011, Cinco de Mayo. And I will probably end up putting some phone numbers in the description, at least the FBI information and the NPS information, like for their tip line. If I should happen to forget to do that stuff, that information is in the majority of my previous vlogs. It won't be in 20 or 21 because that was not concerning cold cases, but most of the other ones, that information will be in the description. And I'm going to try to make sure that I put it in this one, but I also need to do a Thinking Thursdays vlog today. Sorry I allowed myself to get so far behind again. Sometimes I just lack the motivation to do stuff. Kind of hard to be motivated when you don't have a job, you don't have a source of income, you have no vehicle. It's been super cold where I live. We had snow, ice, thunder, sleet, all sorts of interesting stuff. Freezing rain. At least our power did not go out. We're fortunate in that. A lot of stuff that could have been worse than it is. But now back to the case of Adam Clayton Lyle Jones, because that is my main focus for this. At the end, I am going to talk a little bit about some new information that I found on the Kylen, Schulte, and Crystal Turner case. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Adam had last been seen by his family members in Gulf Breeze, Florida on March 31, 2011. He was a 23-year-old white male. The NPS website says that he was 5'7", along with several other stories, but there are some that say he was 5'8". So I'm going with maybe he was 5'7.5". Anyway, somewhere around that. He weighed about 140 pounds. He had blue eyes and light brown hair. At the time he went missing, his hair was in a buzz cut on the top, like sort of long buzz cut, and a little longer in the back from what I saw from the more recent pictures around that time. His car was located about a month and 1 week after he was last seen. This is the only, Yes, this is the only information concerning his case that is listed on the NPS Cold Cases website. Like, it didn't say anything about what he was wearing or anything along that line. According to the NamUs website, which is a national missing persons database, of course, in the United States, and according to the NamUs website, Adam left his home about noon on March 31st, 2011, and was headed west in his light blue 1986 Oldsmobile Delta 88. I was like, ooh, an Oldsmobile Delta 88. Those are nice cars. Anyway, um, which had a dark blue vinyl roof. So it was a light blue car with a dark blue vinyl roof. And of course, they found that at the South Rim Visitors Center at the Grand Canyon National Park on March 5th. No, not March. I'm sorry, May 5th, 2011. He did not take any clothes or personal belongings besides his laptop, which is very strange to me. Most people who are traveling take a good amount of clothes with them. He did not own a cell phone at the time, and it was a warmer time of year, so it's not really like he needed perhaps to take a sleeping bag or blankets and stuff like that, but I still find it odd that he didn't take any extra clothing with him, since it was clearly a trip he had planned because they knew that he was heading west, Anyway, his car was found by a park ranger with the Grand Canyon National Park on May 5th, 2011, Cinco de Mayo, and had been abandoned. Like they thought that it looked like it had been there for a while whenever they found it. And I'm like, I thought that they did daily checks, but they may not check all areas every day, but I would think they would do it at least monthly. But yeah, I don't think they have any indication realistically how long his vehicle had possibly been there. The ranger contacted his parents, who filed a missing persons report 2 days later. I'm sure because they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's missing. And they were like in shock and stuff like that. And it mentions that he did use his debit card regularly when he was traveling going toward the South Rim, which is in Arizona. And I thought it would be interesting to know like the date that his debit card was last used on, because he traveled from Florida to Arizona, which I'm thinking that he most likely made at least a few stops along the way. So that's probably like a 2 or 3 day drive at least, possibly more. Maybe he had some friends or family he was stopping and visiting along the way, but it doesn't say anything about that if he did. So I don't know. An itinerary was found in his car, which indicated he planned to visit Denver, Colorado, as well as other locations in Colorado, according to some sources. Namus just said that in Denver, Colorado, that it showed that he planned to visit Denver, Colorado, in addition to some cities in California. Apparently, even though he did have his laptop with him, he had not contacted his family since he had left his home at the end of March, or not according to what anything that I could find said. And my thought was, he's at the visitor center. The visitor center most likely, at least he probably thought, had Wi-Fi. So maybe he was going to log onto his laptop and be like, hey guys, I made it to the Grand Canyon, or something. Or contact someone while he was there using his laptop was my logic. But I don't think it said that they found the laptop. Well, maybe it did, actually. I think it did say they found the laptop in his car, after I think about it. Adam's family had no idea he was missing until the ranger called to let them know his car had been found abandoned so far from home. It was reported that he had a friend in Yuma, Arizona, but according to the Gulf Breeze News, quote, no one had been able to reach that friend as of May 26, end quote, 2011. And I looked up from the area that he was at the South Rim of the Grand Canyon National Park, the South Rim Visitor Center. Yuma, Arizona is approximately 5.5 miles away with today's speed limits in those areas and such. So it was approximately 5.5 hours from where he was at. Because of regular use of his debit card, authorities were able to track his movements through Arizona and Texas. And I thought that was interesting. Trying to remember, is Arizona right on the other side of Texas? It's not. New Mexico is between the two. So did he not use it in New Mexico? Because I'm like, wouldn't you stop to get a drink or a pack of cigarettes or something in Arizona. Maybe need to get gas again. But it only says that they were able to track his movements through Louisiana and Texas. So it also doesn't say anything about Georgia or Alabama. So maybe he wasn't stopping that often. I don't know. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that those are the only two states that it said they were able to track his movements in. According to NamUs, Adam was last seen in the Grand Canyon visitor parking lot wearing a t-shirt, jeans, and tennis shoes with no brands, colors, patterns, or other possible designs given. And the fact that it says that he was last seen in the visitor center parking lot, I'm guessing there were witnesses who came forward and said that they saw him in the parking lot, which makes me wonder why it doesn't say that the day that he went missing was the day that he was last seen there. I'm almost certain the day that it has listed is the day that he left Florida, and that's not the right person. Yes, it has his missing date as March 31st, 2011. So if someone reported that they had seen him in the South Rim Visitor Center parking lot, why would they have not put the date that the person said they saw him? No way did he drive all the way from Gulf Breeze, Florida to the Grand Canyon in Arizona in the same day, especially if he left at noon. So that makes no sense to me. But anyway, a lot of their information, the information does not seem accurate to me. I guess that they have that date listed because that was when his family last saw him. They don't have confirmation that anyone he knew had seen or talked to him since then. So for all they knew, someone forced him to drive to the Grand Canyon from Gulf Breeze, Florida, maybe. I don't know. But other sources I found say it is unknown if anyone saw him at the visitor center, and I tend to think no one reported seeing him there, or his missing / last seen date, as I just stated, would be the date that person reported seeing him instead of the date he left his home in Florida, because that would be the logical date to use, in my opinion. But I'm guessing also the reason, come to think of it, the reason that the date listed is March 31st, 2011 is because his parents were the ones that filed the missing persons report. And I'm sure it asked, when did you last see or hear from this person? And that was the date they had last seen and heard from him, as I stated. So I'm guessing that is why, because they're the ones that filed the official report, because that's how that is done. Although surely some people did report seeing him on his journey, I would think, because, it said he went through Louisiana and Texas and used his debit card in those places. He had to go, going from Florida, he had to go through Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, and New Mexico to get to Arizona. So there had to be some people that saw him along his journey, and I would think with the internet being prevalent in 2011 that people would have seen stuff about him being missing and been like, oh, I saw that guy, but anyway, so yeah, I would think that surely some people did come forward saying that they saw him along his journey, like at the places authorities were able to see he had used his debit card. Wouldn't they go there and be like, did you see this guy? And people be like, yeah, I saw him. He bought a Coke and a pack of cigarettes, or something. I don't know that he smoked. I'm just, Anyway, I'd like to know if he was still by himself when he went to those places. Did he actually even leave Florida by himself, or was he making this trip with a friend or a couple of friends? I feel it is possible he met up with his friend from Yuma, Arizona, and I said somewhere in Texas, and the two went to the Grand Canyon Visitor Center together. But that is just my opinion. And then that was before I looked up to see where the South Rim Visitor Center at the Grand Canyon is, and discovered that it's actually in Arizona, because I was thinking it was in Colorado, but it's not. It's in Arizona. We went to Arizona one time and drove along the Grand Canyon, and it was scary to me. I was so scared of heights. But anyway, it was beautiful. All of my kids got out, and I stayed in the car. No, I'm not getting out. Anyhow, that was when we stopped, of course. Anyway, being off topic again. So I did find out via Facebook that he had an aunt who lived in Flagstaff, Arizona. At the time he disappeared, I believe she's living back in Florida now. Her name is Kathy something. And with today's speed limits and such, it would take about 1.5 hours to drive to either location from the other location. So like from the south rim of the Grand Canyon National Park to Flagstaff, Arizona, or vice versa. Given today's speed limits and such, would take about 1.5 hours. When people are missing and their vehicle turns up but they don't, I always wonder if anyone checked to see if their vehicle was working properly. I'm sure they probably do. If it wasn't, maybe the missing person caught a ride from someone or tried to walk for help and got lost or met with foul play. As Adam's car was found at the Grand Canyon South Rim Visitor Center, it truly seems he most likely went for a hike and either got lost or injured in some way. While researching this case, I was reminded that most visitors to national parks who go missing are people who leave the trails for one reason or other. The most common reasons being to use the restroom, of course, to get an item they dropped, which may have blown away or slid down a hill, like you're holding your map of the park and it blows out of your hand and you're like, oh, I gotta go get my map. Or you have your camera, you drop it, it slides down the side of the hill or something like that. Water bottle, something like that. Slides down a hill or an embankment. Or sometimes they leave the trail to get closer to wildlife or something in nature, such as a specific plant or rock or similar item they found intriguing. Like you see a great big flat rock out in the middle of the woods and you're like, oh, that looks cool. Let's go over there and look at it. Except you're by yourself in this instance. So you go over there and then you are looking all around the rock and finding all sorts of really cool stuff. And you go back to the trail and you're like, oh crap, which way was the trail? No, because you don't know. That's why it's important to carry an old style compass. There might be things in the area that would keep the compass from working precisely right, but it would be far better than not having anything to go by other than, say, the sun, where the sun is, because it could be a cloudy day and there not be any sign of the sun. So my 2 bits of advice to those who visit national parks are to go with a group and stay with your group and to stay on or at least very near the trails you use. The parks provide these trails to help you keep safe. Bottom line, that's why those trails are there. A lot of the areas that don't have trails because they're overgrown or there's dangerous wildlife there, or like the real rocky terrain, stuff that's easy to slide on. And that's why there's not a trail there. So you really should stick to the trails because that is why they're there. Unfortunately, the small amount of information I have already given concerning the case of Adam Clayton Lyle Jones seems to be all that is available to the public. And I did also find that he had a cousin. I want to say she lived in Florida at the time that he went missing, and I don't recall what her name was. I want to say it was Rachel something. But yeah, he had family that was sharing stuff on Facebook. He's missing. He's my cousin. He's missing. He's my nephew. If anyone has heard from him or seen him, please let the family know, or the National Park Service, or the FBI, or the Gulf Breeze, Florida, please. So they were getting word out there about the fact that he was missing, but as of this date, no sign of him has ever been found. So, that being said, as always, if you are in the national park and you think that you find something that belongs to a missing person, including remains, leave the item in place where you found it. Note your coordinates, X and Y coordinates and all that, and take pictures of it. And that's what the tip line is for. You can text or email the information to the National Park Service tip line and be like, I found this and it was at this coordinates. Make sure you take several pictures from different angles and such, and try to put some landmarks in there too, like a big tree and rock covered in moss or whatever, to give them a better idea of where exactly they need to be looking for it. Because of course the coordinates are not going to be exact. I mean, you know what I'm saying. So anyway, so now I'm going to talk about the Krista Turner and Kylen Schulte case, because I did find some new information on it yesterday, and that information is that the Grand County, Utah Sheriff's Office has had a person of interest in the case of Krista Turner and Kylen Schulte since the day after they were reported missing, which is August the 17th, 2021. This information here was made public when the Grand County Sheriff's Office chose to let some search warrants that they had expire because they had cleared the person that the search warrants pertained to. Now, the search warrants being sealed does not necessarily mean that the things that they were wanting to search were not searched. It could mean that they asked the person for permission to search those things, and the person was like, yeah, sure, you can search them, why not, and therefore they didn't have to use the search warrants pertaining to the locations. So a 27-year-old man from out of state who had recently moved to Moab was stopped for speeding by a deputy who thought he was he was stopped by a deputy who thought he, quote, was unnerving. Sorry, I had to write that at an angle and I'm going, where? But anyway, yeah. So a 27-year-old man from out of state, he did not live in Utah, but who had recently moved to Moab, was stopped for speeding by a deputy who thought he was, quote, unnerving for someone who had only been stopped for speeding. And I think that why he said he was unnerving was because he thought that the person seemed like they were super, super nervous or really, really worried that they got stopped by the police. And they're like, he shouldn't be acting like this since we just stopped him for speeding. This man regularly sleeps in his vehicle. They spoke to people who were acquainted with the guy or had seen him around, is where they got part of this information. And also he told the authorities the same things in a lot of the cases. So he regularly sleeps in his vehicle. Authorities were told he often, quote, makes unwanted advances towards women and makes them feel uneasy, end quote. And that was in reference to the creepy dude who was camping near Kylen and Crystal. The people were like, oh, well, that guy does often make unwanted advances toward women and makes them feel uneasy, so maybe he's the one that they were referring to, Apparently, the creepy man Kylen and Crystal had told friends about wasn't just camping near them, but had visited them at their campsite, which is information that I had not heard before, but that was in the sealed envelope. Or actually, I think it said this information was connected to a previous search warrant that had been unsealed. But I had never heard that information that he actually visited them at their website, their campsite, instead of just being camping near them, because someone can creep you out even if they're even if they don't come up and be like, "Hey, what's up?" But they were camping at the creek, and maybe he was just going to get some water, and was like, "Hey, how y'all doing? Is it okay if I get some water from the creek, or I need to get some water from the creek, or whatever?" But for whatever reason, they found the dude creepy, of course. So yeah, he had visited them at their website. He was not just camping near them. Now, mind you, as I stated a while ago, this 27-year-old man has not been charged and, in fact, was cleared by the sheriff's office, which makes some information that has now been released seem odd to me. I mean, I'd like to know more about some of the facts, as I know many people would. So, when he was asked by authorities if he knew Crystal and Kylen, the man stated that he saw Kylen regularly in Moonflower, where she worked, the Moonflower Co op. He also said he was not aware Kylen and Crystal were married, and added he had, quote, nothing against gay people, end quote. And I was going to make a note that it was odd that he said that when he was stopped. He was stopped for speeding, and they were questioning him, and it was like the day after they were reported missing, which was the day before they were found dead. But then I remembered that it said that they questioned him a couple of days later concerning the women. So that would have been the day after they were found, is when they were actually questioning him. He couldn't recall where he was on the dates the women were missing, but said that he did not kill them. Like the deputy was like, "Did you kill these women?" And he just said no. Didn't go into a big, trying to defend himself and make statements about what he was doing, where he was at the time, because he said he couldn't recall that, which is interesting to me because it was just a few days after they had gone missing. I could remember what I was doing. But the deputy did believe that possibly this young man had a mental illness of some type. He also told the deputy who questioned him that he often slept, quote, out in the open, end quote, by himself, and an area that he slept in was along the LaSalle Loop Road, which of course is the road that Kylen and Crystal had been camped off of whenever they were murdered. There were 2 blankets. Now, this is part of this. This is the stuff here I would like to know more information about. There were 2 blankets as well as a jacket with blood on it that were found at his campsite. I wonder how far from their campsite his campsite was, because obviously the deputies did go and search his campsite, which I'm guessing is probably what one of the sealed search warrants was for, or perhaps the previous one that I did not know the information about, that he had visited them at their campsite, according to some of their friends and what they had told the police. But yeah, had to do with the search warrant. They had to. I mean, it's a national park where he was camped, so I don't even know if they would have to have a search warrant for that. They would have to have him search his vehicle. But I feel like perhaps he just let him search it. You know what I mean? So that being said, I really am curious. I'd like to know exactly how far from their campsite his campsite was. And deputies also say a cell phone, the one that we've all heard about that was found at the women's campsite, did not belong to either of them. And I was talking to my son, and I'm like, I mean, you would have to be able to figure out whose cell phone it was. And he pointed out fingerprints, possibly DNA from talking on your phone, or even DNA from texting. I was like, social media sites, texting with family and friends, contacts in the phone. How would you not be able to know, to find out whose phone this is? Even if the phone has died, they should be able to pull that information from the phone. Now, I suppose part of the issue with that is that just because the phone was in that area did not mean that that specific person the phone belonged to is necessarily the person who murdered the 2 women. Odds are they were, but like if it was The persons that had been camped nearby, as I said, the person could have walked through their camp and gone to the creek to get some water, drop the phone, you know. So they would need evidence that the person who owned the phone did actually commit the murders. Um, that being said, the article that I read said the man has no criminal record in Grand County, but I personally wonder if he has a criminal record elsewhere because it didn't say anything about that. And they can search anywhere realistically. When I moved to Oklahoma, there were a lot of people that told me, "Oh, they can't see stuff that happened in Arkansas, like your criminal history in Arkansas, when they do run a check in Oklahoma." And I'm like, "It's a national check, so yeah, they can." What? Huh? Are you feeling better? Good. I'll take you out after you get done with this, Easy. Take it. So where was I? Oh yes, criminal record. Clearly, authorities didn't find any gun. I'm sorry, didn't find any. Yeah, I say any gun. Anyway, clearly, authorities didn't find any gun or guns in his vehicle or at his campsite. It is my guess that is why they didn't charge him with anything, because we all know that the women had been shot. Also, I want to note my source did not mention what type of blood was on the jacket at his campsite, but I am sure they tested the DNA from it. It could be animal blood, could be his blood, could be blood from someone he went hiking with, who knows. I will keep an eye on this case and let you all know if there are any updates, which I'm sure there will be, just a matter of time. Tune in later tonight for my Thinking Thursdays vlog, where all thoughts are positive. Until then, everyone have a great whatever time of night or day it is in your part of the world. Stay safe and stay positive.